Hello, I'm Anne Kerr. Welcome to my art studio. A little squirrel in watercolour is what we're going to be painting today. If you'd like to have a go at this one, then I'll put the line drawing for you up on my website and you can download that for free. And I'll put the link to that in the description below this video. So, are you ready? The first thing to do is to wet the background all over with clear water and leave the squirrel and the tree trunk completely dry. Now with some cobalt blue mixed with a little tiny bit of burnt sienna, we'll put in the sky. A little extra paint and a bit darker at the top, and add a little bit of yellow at the bottom to give it a bit of a green tinge. Take out some of the paint to give the background a bit of texture and some movement. Allow that to dry completely. Now with clear water, wet the squirrel, but leave the area of the eye and leave the area of the white front. And while it's still wet, drop in raw sienna. Again, avoid the eye. Now drop in burnt sienna, wet into wet. Let everything bleed together and work fairly quickly. Lift out any little bits using a damp brush. Back in again with burnt sienna while it's still wet and let everything bleed together. Now let everything dry completely before going in to paint the eye. I used burnt sienna mixed with ultramarine, but you could use black if you have it. And remember to leave a little tiny white bit for the highlight. Once again, let that dry before going back in and re-wetting the red areas of the squirrel. If you wanted to leave the eye until the end, if you're a little bit afraid of touching it with the wet water, then that would be fine. In once again with burnt sienna, gradually building up the darks. Once again, I let that dry before going in and wetting the white front of the squirrel. Then drop in some little grey shadows and let them bleed onto the wet paper. Once again, I've allowed that to dry before going back in and re-wetting the areas to keep building up my darks. If you think your squirrel is already dark enough, then you don't have to do this particular stage. Remember that little hand sticking out at the end of the tree trunk. Lift out any areas where you want it to be light. Still allowing everything to blend wet into wet. Put a few little spiky hairs on the top of the ears. I used the end of my rigger brush to do this. Now the little nose with some watered down burnt sienna. And a little bit of dark underneath the nose. When you paint the mouth, keep it very soft and keep the lines nice and broken. I forgot to mention that I did actually let the head dry completely before I did the mouth and the nose. Now that everything is dry, go back in and re-wet the area of the tail with clear water and drop in your burnt sienna and also some burnt sienna mixed with ultramarine. Use clear water to wet the area well beyond where you want the tail to finish. And then you can push the strokes out into the water and you'll get fuzzy tops. And as you know, fuzzy tops is a technical term. Lift out some highlights and you'll find that if you alternate highlights and putting in some dark and keep building up those highlights and dark, you'll get a fluffy effect for the whole of the tail. Once again, push those strokes out into the wet area to give the strokes a nice soft effect. Allow everything to dry completely and then with either a very tiny brush or, as I'm using the end of my rigger, flick in some dark whiskers. With a little bit of white gouache, pop in a few little hairs here and there. Don't overdo it. Just a suggestion of some white fur. One or two little highlights and sparkles in the tail. And let everything dry completely. Now completely wet the area of the tree trunk with clear water. Drop in a foundation of raw sienna mixed with a little bit of cobalt blue. Keep everything wet and wet. Use mixes of all your 4 colours and drop in the markings in the tree trunk. Try and keep the colour more towards the grey side than the brown side so that it distinguishes it from the squirrel. Work fairly quickly while it's all still wet, and as it just begins to dry, make sure your paint is a little more concentrated, with more pigment and less water. Notice my paint is not moving as much now that the area is becoming a little more dry. Let everything dry completely, then use a brush with some dark paint, only a little bit of paint on the brush, to stroke in some texture. Notice how I'm holding my brush. Then with the end of the rigger, or if you prefer a very tiny brush, put in some little lines to make some texture in the trunk of the tree. Put in the dark shadow at the bottom of the crack in the tree. and put on the lovely dark brown claws on the end of the little fingers. Don't forget the one over there. Cover up the area that you don't want to get splashes on and splash on some dark colour on the trunk of the tree. And there we have the finished painting. I've added a few little wriggly twiggy bits, and of course wriggly twiggy bits is a technical term. I think you'll agree that he is rather cute. Remember, if you want to have a go at this painting, that you can slow the video down if you want to. Obviously I haven't put every single brush stroke into the video because it would make it far too long, but there should be enough information there for you to have a go. And if you'd like to have the line drawing, I'll put that up on my website for you, and I'll put a link to that in the description below this video. If this one's been useful and you'd like some more videos like this, then please consider clicking that subscribe button and the little bell icon, because that lets you know when I upload another video for you. If you've enjoyed this one, give it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Remember, there is an artist in everyone. Goodbye for now.